Hi, welcome back. Welcome back. So glad to have you with us again today. I'm thrilled to have with us today Elizabeth Hamilton Guarino. Such an amazing woman, such a powerhouse, not only as a business entrepreneur, but also as a thinker. She is an amazing thinker in our world today. She is a master life coach. She created the Best Ever You network that we will hear all about today. And she's written lots of books, bestsellers, all kinds of awards. I'm currently in the middle of the Success Guidebook, which I absolutely love. And her definition of success absolutely aligns with mine. And so this has been a delight to read. I'm also kind of addicted to this little book. Great book, great name, Percolate. Let your best self filter through. She's also got a book that's just gone wildly crazy, The Change Guidebook. Elizabeth, can you hold that up? Hi, how are you today?
Hi.
Do you have that? Yeah, The Change Guidebook has been just an amazing seller for her, and I think you'll really want to take a look at it. So come on and join us today, and let's talk to Elizabeth. Hey again.
Hey there.
How are you?
I'm great. It's a delight to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, I'm just thrilled to have you, and I'm sit in awe of your work, and just kind of want to talk about all parts of you and your work today, your life. Where I like to start, because it gives us just an interesting basis for how your life formed and where you would go to create such an amazing network like the Best Ever You. What was your religious underpinning growing up?
Yeah, that's a very good question, isn't it? So I grew up in Iowa, and I grew up going to church every weekend, alternating Catholic and Presbyterian.
Oh my gosh, that's like ping pong for a child.
You asked. Yeah, so my dad was Catholic and my mom was Presbyterian, and we would go and alternate churches each week for the most part.
So
and I'm in the
when
middle
did
of
you?
11 kids.
11, I thought it was 10. You're the middle of 11 kids.
Yeah.
That's craziness. I mean, we could spend the whole time just talking about what it's like to be
Oh, yeah.
raised in a house with 11 kids.
Read a whole book on that. But yeah, it took vans to get us to church. It took vans to get us to brunch. It took, it was a lot.
Oh my gosh, I want to delve into that in a minute. But my first question is, if you're raised in a home like that, where your dad's a staunch Catholic and your mom's Presbyterian, when did you start to kind of figure out what your values were, your belief system?
Really young
Tell
in that,
me.
in those moments. But, what I think what it taught me is this deep appreciation for everyone, including everyone. And I think that's where my values are. They're really not one way or the other. They're just super inclusive to all. And so I really deeply respect all of the different views and opinions and just all of the differences that we all have that make us unique. And I think from a really young age, I learned to become a peacekeeper really early on. Peacemaker, peacekeeper, especially when you're in the middle of that.
I was going to say,
you're in the middle of 11.
I love what you had to say about how your belief system works, and then peacekeeper, that can get tricky because it can shut down parts of you.
Yeah. But, I learned, even on Best Ever You, I welcome everybody. And that way your audience isn't divided and people feel left out and things like that. My mom used to say, you've got everything but the kitchen sink on there. And I'm like, please bring that too. So we can have everybody have a home. And I know that's strange sometimes to people that, I want to have everybody all in one spot. And I really do. And it's just a fabulous network of all different kinds of people.
Yeah, I'm in the same place. It's exactly what I want to do with the Soul Talks podcast. It's predicated on my survival journey and then hearing the survival journeys of others. But at the very core of it, everybody's in a survival journey of some sort. Every single person. Yeah. And I mean, just like what you said earlier about going through so much pain and trauma in your life because you have these really severe food allergies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a life survival.
Well, yeah, so I'm 55 now. I'm the mom of 4 sons. They're 23, 25, 27, and 29. And I hesitate before I have to say 30. I'm just stopping. He's going to just stay 20. They're all staying in their 20s forever. Anyway, so on the third pregnancy, second pregnancy, actually, I was around 25, 26-ish. I developed life-threatening food allergies after that pregnancy. And it was really interesting because the entire pregnancy I craved shrimp and I craved peanut butter and nuts and things like that. And that is exactly what I'm allergic to now. I have life-threatening
And they
food
are so
allergies.
severe that they are life-threatening.
Yeah, I have anaphylaxis. I have a medical
Oh
alert
my
on. I have
gosh.
epinephrine in my purse. And, but I sometimes wonder if logically, like I gave my son things that he needed to be okay, and it depleted me, which I'm fine with because I wouldn't want any of them to have what I have. So I'll take
Yeah.
it. And it's a challenge. It's an everyday challenge. And I spend a lot of energy helping children and families cope with diagnosis of food allergies and learning how to stay alive and thrive. I have a best-selling children's book. co- So, lesson for every child learning about food allergies. That's what the great Sally Huss. And so we do everything in our power to help with food allergies and helping people, feel okay, navigate change, navigate their success with when you have something going on in the background that isn't feeling like it's so successful,
Yeah.
and the purpose of all of that.
Let's run back. I want to run way back, but just to the point you just made. So, you have written a lot of children's books as well as these amazing books for us as adults to help us be our best. But, you grew up in the middle of 11 kids, and then you have four pretty closely placed kids of your own. Tell me about the drive to write for children.
Oh, yeah. I think that I've always wanted to be a children's book author. Since I was a little kid, I've been writing stories. And with the Best Ever You Network, it took sort of a detour with the self-help books for, adults and things like that. But in the back, the very first book I ever wrote when I turned 40 was a children's book. And it started this journey of becoming the author that I am today. But so Blueberry the cat became Blueberry, Blueberry and Jam Adventures in Maine, which is a best-selling children's book about Maine. The cat and the mouse, an unlikely pair, team up together as friends and tour the state of Maine. So you'll always see these themes in my books about kindness, collaboration, cooperation, and purpose. The Very Lucky Ladybug is a new one. She loses all of her spots, and her friends come together and paint them all back on. And so,
Oh.
yeah, I love that book. And I've got some more ideas for things like that coming. But yeah, it's easier to write. It's easier to sell and market children's books. They're harder to write. Self-help books, they're a little bit easier to write and so forth because there's not illustrations, but they're harder to market because you have to
Sure.
teach about them. You have to, there's various
Right.
things that go with that. Usually a children's book will just sort of sell itself without too much effort if it's got good illustrations and good writing and things like that. But yeah, no, I love
To
children's
your
books.
point, yeah, I do too. I love them for myself, not
Oh,
just for the kids,
we
right?
could
Like,
sit and have a whole show about all the books we love. It Giraffes
I
Can't
know.
Dance and Guess How Much I Love You, and there's a ton of
Well,
them.
yeah, and I can hold on to that, the simplicity, but the profound or profundity, if you will, of the concept
Yeah.
makes it so easy to hold on to. But to your point, and something I really applaud so much in the work that you're doing in the world, is that you are including children
Yeah.
and starting with children, pouring such good values, good sense of themselves. I was recently listening, I told you about this, I think, when we talked earlier to this woman I admire a lot, Marissa Peer, and she has this platform called I Am Enough,
Yeah.
and she's a therapist in rapid transformational therapy, but she was talking about she lives in Dubai and that there are so many expat kids coming in there who aren't very grounded. They've been moved around a lot, don't have a strong sense of self or culture. That because they're in a culture that is very foreign to them, and that she has such a drive to do this work with kids to teach them very early, their value as human beings, how worthy they are, that they are enough just exactly like they are. And so I applaud what you're doing because it's very, it's similar in your way.
Trying to tackle all of the ages. Because if you
Yeah,
get to be my age and you've forgotten that you're enough, we're going to reconnect you right here, move you from your head to your heart all day long so you can
that's
align
right.
your heart, truths, and energy. But also, one of the things that I've done is I've written the Change Guidebook, the Success Guidebook, and Percolate so that really, not, I guess not any age could pick them up. I guess they could. There's nothing in them that would, be profoundly offensive or anything like that. But, so that we we talk to high school, college, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and so forth to get the dialogue going so that people have it instilled in them at a young age that they are enough, that everything's grounded in self-love and self-worth and the value, and that you don't forget to remember your value as you age and grow and change. And I have had just this book right here, the Change Guidebook, people go like this to it. Like it meets them right in that moment and people give it a hug. And I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. They're like,
I was
Elizabeth,
going
I'm
to
hugging
say,
your book. And I'm like, you go. And I think it's
how
been
good does
helping
it feel to
I
put
just
something
love
like
it.
that into the world, and go, I wrote this, I wrote it from my heart, from my experiences, from my belief system, but then, for people to really hold it as their,
Yeah, I wrote in the
path.
intro to the Success Guidebook, the new one. I wrote about this moment that I was having. I was in Massachusetts and we were sitting there having coffee, and I was right next to this table of girls, and they were all like maybe 24, 25, that age group of our kids. And I'm listening because I can't help because I'm right there, and I've got glasses on, my hair on my head, and ripped jeans. You have no idea who anybody is. And they're talking about self-help books that their mom has left on the counter that they all hate and they're not reading and all this stuff. And one of them goes, there's one that I have read that I loved. It's the Change Guidebook. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm sitting right next. That was so random and so cool. So I'm like, so
So
I
you
wrote that.
did
They're like,
go over.
and it was like girl
Aw.
screams that I'm not used to as a boy mom. And it was super cute and super fun. And just that moment where you have as an author where you're like, wow, somebody's actually read that. And it's not a neighbor or family.
Yeah. Well, you're putting out amazing messaging in the world, and as you said, for all ages. And I want to go back a little bit because I really adore your story. Would you talk about, because as I'm delving more and more into your books, and I'm finding the consistency of your value system laid out over and over and over, your definitions of success, which there's nothing wrong with wealth as part of your success, but that your definition is so much broader, as is mine. But would you dial back and just tell me about growing up with these two parents, immigrants, right, who were so entrepreneurial, and you're part of their business at a very young age?
Yeah, so my parents are Jim and Carolyn Hamilton. They're not immigrants, actually.
Okay.
Just so you know,
Sorry about that.
they were here.
I think I got that
I
story
guess
somewhere in
everybody
your book.
is. It's okay. I guess
Yeah,
everybody
we
is.
are all.
Yeah, but they're from Minnesota, Iowa, Minnesota, the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, and they were very entrepreneurial, and I think they had to be because there were so many of us, and they were so outnumbered. They're like, how do we achieve with this group and make sure everybody's fed, clothed, and so forth. And they owned a giant chain of video stores while I was growing up.
Right.
So they kind of hit the big time. When I was maybe like junior, a little bit older than junior high or so. And they had a chain of video stores called the movie stores all throughout Iowa and Minnesota. And it was really fun. But one of the things that that they did that I learned that was so cool was they took their wealth and they applied it to the foster care system.
Oh gosh, I love that.
Yeah, they did.
It's
And there was
beautiful.
one year where they were like, okay, they got us the family all around, and they're like, we're going to buy Christmas for the entire foster care system in Davenport, Iowa, and these two churches. Anybody that needs anything, we're going to get lists of things from people, and we're going to buy everything on the list. And I'm thinking,
That's
okay, TVs,
amazing.
car, what's going to be on this list kind of thing, like if you're going to buy me anything, what's on the list? I need a real different approach. I'm like, okay, I can't wait to see what this is, kind of thing, kind of smart alecky about it. And in one sheer instance, I became non-smart alecky as I saw paper towels, underwear, socks as the common theme over and over and over and over again. I still have that list. It's upstairs next to our bed in a drawer. I keep it with me, and I've kept it for years and tens of not tens of thousands of years, but it feels like it at this
all
point.
the years.
All the years. And they bought everything on the list, and they adopted a child. And so my youngest brother, Justin, we adopted at birth, and he has fetal alcohol syndrome.
Oh gosh.
And we adopted him at birth, and the doctor said he will never do this, that, and another thing because he has fetal alcohol syndrome so severely, and he was born addicted to crack and all of these
Mm.
things. And my mom and dad were like, "Watch us."
Hmm. I
And
love that.
yeah, they were like, "Watch it, whatever he to the limits of what he can achieve, he's going to achieve." And he can walk, he can talk. He's savant in certain areas like history. Like, so he'll come and stay with me and my husband, Peter, for an entire summer. And he will just absorb the history of New England. We'll take him down to Boston. We'll take him here and there. So very, very interesting human being. But very interesting growing up like that. It taught me at a very young age to be very aware of other people.
Yeah, so many questions come to my mind as you're telling the story. Um, First, I kind of want to make a differentiation, if I understand your story correctly, and correct
Yeah.
me. So you're in the middle of this big family who has developed this amazing business, and your family at that point has a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
You are country club members. You probably, even with that many kids, you have kind of everything you want,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely everything you want. And
But
then we
before
don't.
we go to that and then,
Yeah.
and when it all fell apart,
Yeah.
but you also worked in those stores,
Oh,
right?
what a joy that was too. Yeah, from a young, tiny age, I was the junior assistant manager. So I, I highly recommend that every single soul spend some time doing retail customer service as a job, no
Isn't that the
matter
truth?
what. It is eye-opening what people need, what people say, what people want, what's going on in their lives, and so forth. So my whole early career is all retail. I was the door greeter at Walmart at a point. I at Sam's Club, which is Walmart. I sold men's clothing for years and years while I was in college. I have tons of video retail experience, just, video rental experience in retail. But, a lot of
How
fun with retail. Yeah.
did you ever resent having to work in the family business?
No,
No?
not a moment, because we're a movie loving group and it was a blast. It was super, super, super fun. Great period of time until it wasn't.
We're going to get there. But one more question.
Yeah, I hear you.
um, but I think I read that you said somewhere, or maybe you said it to me personally, that but later when you looked back on those times and they were great times and it felt like the best of times, you realized that with that great wealth, what was sacrificed was you didn't have that much time with your parents.
Yeah, so at the beginning of all of that, it was real hands-on. Everybody was together and so forth. And as the wealth grew, they purchased an island up in northern Minnesota with a cabin on it, with boats and cars, and another island, and all of
Oh my
these
gosh.
things. And they were still great parents and so forth. But you would see them leave for the summer, and you'd be in Iowa. I'd be in Iowa working or going to school or
Mhm.
doing whatever I was doing. So you would see them leave. But for the most part, um, they were great parents. I mean,
Yeah.
I could never sit here and go, they were terrible and they were mean. I had no issues with that kind of thing at all. But in hindsight, it would have been cool to see them at more functions and things like that. But they were really working um,
Yeah.
to make sure all of us were okay. And once it got going, they were working to expand it and make sure everybody was okay, kind of lifelong. My mom was like, if we play our cards right, no one's ever going to have to work again. If we play our cards right,
Oh.
everybody will, and it didn't quite work out that way. Would have
So
been neat
yeah.
if it did, but
I don't know. I think work gives us purpose though.
yeah.
Um, so tell us about what happened
What
when it didn't
happened?
work anymore. And you
Yeah,
were in college at this point, right?
I was. Yeah, it started a little bit before that, but basically, not to point fingers or anything like that, but somebody came in and did a number on my parents and made it so the movie stores no longer existed. Taxes didn't get paid, things didn't get paid, and it was a mess. And it
I
went in
understand that story.
bankruptcy of biblical
Yeah.
proportion and then liquidation and so forth and closed. And I remember at that point going, the only thing I know is movies, that movie store and video rental and things like that. And it was a tough transition into what am I going to do?
Because
And
it was pretty fast for you, right?
it
You're in
was pretty
college.
fast for me. I went, I have experience doing a lot of television commercials in this area as a kid. I will be a news anchor. And it was
Yeah.
pretty clear to me. I'm like, okay, I can do the news.
Yeah.
I've got it. And so I went to journalism school. I remember crying with Don Schneider there, who was one of the instructors and so forth, and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, and how am I going to even pay for this if I do want to go do this?
Right.
I'm a Pell Grant kid,
Mm-hmm.
very Pell Grant kid, but I got through school working full time at Von Maur selling men's clothing, at Yonkers selling men's clothing, and then at Sam's Club as the door greeter. So, and I eventually, when I graduated from school, I worked at the Sam's Club job for a little bit more. Um, never really did too much as a news anchor. As it turns out, it was pretty funny. I'm like,
But it kept you going.
yeah, it kept me going. I went to school for journalism. I have all that, but when I got going, I was so much more interested, of course, in the writing aspect of it all. Wasn't so interested in being picked on for my hair color and my face or wrinkles, how old I got or anything like that. I
Mm-hmm.
was more interested in the writing, and I was very interested in the sports. And when I
Yeah.
was doing news anchorish type things and being on the news, I was always gravitating toward the sports. And the people would say to me, girls don't do that. Girls don't do the sports. And I think I would have had a different career, maybe as a sports journalist, if I had not listened to that, but it sunk in, unfortunately. I was like, oh, okay, paying attention to whatever. So I love sports.
I know you have so many references, and I have so little knowledge. And I keep going baseball, baseball, baseball when
Baseball,
I'm reading your
baseball.
stuff. And all the people you quote, I go, I don't know who this is, but I know they're famous. Like I'm trying to catch up to you. But I find it fascinating that you grew up in this home that was so entrepreneurial. You work young, have this big work ethic, and even if you weren't maybe fully metabolizing it, you began to understand the principles of owning your own business,
Yeah.
being very driven for work and knowing you got to show up no matter what. It comes into play in your life later. But I wanted to explore something you ran over a little bit because I think it's so powerful. Very quickly when your parents had to, they tried not to go into full bankruptcy and then had to, and you lost the islands and you lost the cars and you lost the mansion that you lived in, and
Yeah.
you're in college and you even slept in your car for a few days.
I did. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe even a bit longer than a few days. But yeah, I remember thinking, it's in the newspapers at that point and it's on the news. And silly
Yeah.
me, I'm thinking nobody knows about this, I can
Mhm.
hide, kind of thing. And then I was really like, how do I hide from this? Because Davenport, Iowa, Bettendorf, Iowa, it's not that big of a place and it's in the news everywhere. And I was thinking, this is like shame. This is like blame. This is embarrassing. This is not cool anymore. So there was a
Right.
little bit of that going on, like, I'm not that anymore. What am I? Kind of
I'm
thing. And
sure.
I had to really step in there. And I will tell you one thing that I did do. Um, I I entered a pageant, actually. I entered a pageant for the money and the
Yeah.
scholarships for school in that moment. And I didn't bank on winning the pageant.
Then you had to do all the pageant girl stuff, show up for all the appointments, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. I won the pageant and all the cash and scholarships and so forth that went with it. And in that moment, I was able to take my mom and my grandparents and to escape the misery of the bankruptcy and go to Hawaii, because it was a chaperone paid thing, and we scraped money together to grab my grandparents on a once in a lifetime thing. And we went to Hawaii for the national pageant for Miss Iowa National Teenager and the Miss National Teenager pageant. But that really helped. It
Yeah.
helped in a strange way, self-esteem. Like, okay, we've got this. A little bit of validation that I must have needed at the time. I'm not
Sure.
sure. But it helped, and it was really good on a resume at the time, a long time
Hmm.
ago. Like, okay, it was good for TV. It was good for writing. It was good for those things. So I always kind of treasure that experience. It was really fun to be Miss Iowa Teen.
Oh, I love that. You say, you needed the validation, you needed other things. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. But I think you were also so smart going, I need the money.
You
I
did.
need the scholarship.
I
I've got to do this on
truly,
my own. My parents aren't there for me anymore.
yeah, I truly saw dollar signs. I was like, oh, this is a way that would help. And it did. And it was pretty lovely in that moment. So I always credit that as kind of like a pivotal moment of like, okay, we've got some money for school and things like that. I didn't have all the money for school. I was still going to have to work and things like that. But it also did another thing. It taught me the value of a platform at a very young age. And there's no social media or cell phones or anything like that. So I was like, how can I get my message out? Think, don't drive and drink.
Hmm.
I was very, very much, that was my whole platform was think, don't drive and drink. And I appeared on billboards and all throughout the state of Iowa. Governor Branstad at the time helped with my campaign. I spoke at schools, all sorts of things. And that whole entire experience has helped me with Best Ever You and learn how to market things and write books and learn how to speak in interviews or speak in written interviews. All of it. Really cool experience.
Yeah, your purpose was calling you way back then,
Oh, yeah.
I think. So what happened to your family? Like, so you're right smack in the middle of those 11 kids, right?
Yeah.
So half of them knew a life of wealth all the way through their college experiences.
Yep.
Then you're in the middle of college and you have this huge pivot that probably defined a lot of who you are today.
Yep.
And then you have all these other kids who don't have that wealth experience.
Right.
What did what
Yeah.
happened?
So what happened is it like I say in the book and the episode of I call it Schitt's Creek that
Yeah,
kind
I
of just like
loved
that is
reading that.
exactly what happened. It was like, oh no, there's actual tape around our house and driveway. You can't go in. So they moved. They moved to Minnesota up with my grandparents, and I stayed in Iowa with my that my who would be my husband, who would become my husband, Mike McClaney. I have a divorce. It's in my books and things like that. But I have a first husband and a second husband that I've been married to. Actually, today is our 26th anniversary.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
Yes.
That's
And
amazing.
so, but nothing. The family didn't break apart or anything like that. But older sisters went their way, and the younger crew stayed with my parents. And my parents opened up another business after they got on their feet.
Love
And they
that
would,
resilience.
yeah, oh yeah, totally
I love
resilient. And
that.
they would go on to reclaim a lot of their wealth, have a nice house, have a nice upbringing, and so forth, through a company called Black Mountain Traders. And it supplies, it still does. Sort of, my dad passed away in 2018, so it's been really interesting for my mom to keep that going. But they supplied gift shops with merchandise, all
Okay.
sorts of merchandise, um,
What a
which
story of
was,
resilience after just,
yeah,
and I totally understand. I had a business I loved and, just an awful thing happened within that business that was fraud and the business had to close. I didn't
yeah,
declare bankruptcy. I paid off all the debt, but it was, as you say about how you felt in college, and I'm curious about this. I walked away from the failure of that business with so much shame.
yeah,
How could I, as a woman, not make this business work? I'd let down myself, all the people who'd worked so hard, side by side with me to make it into this amazing little business. And my investors, just had such overwhelming shame and guilt about it.
yeah.
And you mentioned both those words, being in college and feeling that shame and guilt. What was your walk out of that?
out of out of that
Sh-
out of shame and guilt, the walk out of
Yes.
shame and guilt part of the pageant did that for me too, but also
Yeah.
being the first one in our family to graduate from college, that was a big deal. And I
Interesting.
graduated with honors, and taking that and maneuvering and so forth. So, like, I've always felt like I would take little wins. I didn't know if I
Hmm.
was ever going to be that type of person that had that ginormous win or that ginormous breakthrough, but I've known in my life little wins and little things that I gather that I'm like, okay, I kind of think of them as projects in a way. Little project management success. And that was one of them. At the time I'm like, okay, we're going to graduate from college. This is not going to be easy. In order to do this, you're going to have be working full time and having school full time, and that 2 full-time jobs. That was very hard to do and maintain an A grade point average. I think I got like two
Well,
B's maybe.
congratulations.
Yeah, so
But
very driven human being. And
Yeah.
so, the up out of that was the moment where Sam's Club said, okay, let's move you to Minnesota. Instead of you going and becoming a news anchor, why don't we, Sam's Club, take you and move you to Minnesota and make you the marketing manager of the Sam's Clubs in the Minneapolis area? And I'm like, that doesn't sound so bad, actually. That sounds like a great idea.
That's a
And
big job for a very young woman.
it was a very big job for a very young woman, and they trusted me with it. And we painted a big mural that said marketing on the move, and I learned visioning, the vision
Yeah,
techniques, and visiting the
absolutely.
vision every day, and, signing off on the vision and having a whole team on the same page and getting it done and growing things. And the turnaround there, going from turning Sam's Clubs from I think we turned them from Costco into Sam's Clubs, and then grew the
Hmm.
membership up in all the clubs around the whole uh, area, and then opened them up in Rochester, Minnesota. Was a tremendously wonderful experience as a young woman. To be entrusted to do something like that was pretty cool.
Oh, I think that's phenomenal, and that you were able to rise to the occasion. But I
Yeah,
have to ask, so you're the first in your family to graduate from college. So
yeah.
that was that the first time you ever felt like, well, I'm one of 11, but I've really broken away from the pack?
A little bit. I think I moved away from Minnesota and Iowa. I moved to California, um, way back in 1990. I'm gonna date myself here. I was like, what year is that? Way back in 1998, I moved away from the Midwest and lived in
Hmm.
California. And then in 2004, moved from California to Maine. And I've been in Maine for that many years now, over 20 years. And I
Hmm.
have broken away from the pack a little bit, but the pack is
Hmm.
great. They're all doing their own thing too. So it wasn't like, oh, I need to leave all of you. You're not good or anything like that.
Hmm.
Everybody's fabulous. And there's so many grandkids and great grandchildren now and so forth. So it's everything. But we found our home here in Maine, and we have loved every minute of raising our boys here in Maine.